Hello again. Welcome back to Fibre Haptic Crafts. My name is Vicky, or Victoria, or Vic if you are my sister. I'm a historian and fibre artist based in Manchester in the UK. Today I'm going to be making some little collaged cards, roughly postcard sized, 6 inches by 4 inches, I believe. Yep, 6 by 4 inches. And these have been cut out of this old Reader's Digest book. I bought this with fairly high hopes that it would have some interesting, inspiring illustrations in it. I have managed to cut out a few interesting things. There's been some good textures and things in there, but honestly, so much of it is sort of old photographs. There's a lot of celebrity deaths in here, occasional crime scene photos, actual pictures of dead bodies and funerals and things, and I'm not that keen. I haven't got as much use out of this as I hoped. So rather than cutting out a lot of the pictures and then kind of converting the remaining pages into a book, as I have done with some other altered books, what I've done instead is I've essentially cut out all of the pages as a block, leaving the two attached outer covers. And once this is no longer being used to keep this lot fairly straight, I'll be turning this into a junk journal for A4 sized pieces of art that I've done. So that's my plan for this. In the meantime, I mean, obviously that's going to be quite a good background for something, but in the meantime, almost all of these pages are going to be cut out and then cut down to a more useful size, because it is quite good quality paper. These copies of this book are very cheaply available and abundant, so I am not worried that I might have destroyed something that somebody else would make better use of than I am, and be otherwise unable to find it. I'm not at all worried about the destruction of this book, or indeed the repurposing of the materials in this book. I'm making very, very good use out of it, I promise you. Okay, so these are my bases. I have also got a whole bunch of packaging materials with various different designs on. And I've got pages from other old books which I have scribbled all over, just various experiments in decorating these. Some of them are quite nice, some of them I do quite like, and I'll probably weed those out. Quite a lot of the others, though, they didn't work out nicely enough for me to put the whole page into a junk journal. I think these would look much better torn up and used as part of a collage. It's a judgment call, really, but in my case, I think a lot of these are a bit too dark, a bit too busy, and in the case of the ones towards the end, you might be able to tell the combination of the cheap watercolour that I used and the kind of paper means that the pigment is just coming right off as a very chalky layer. Very, very disappointed in the paints that I bought. They're not behaving like watercolour at all. So these would definitely benefit from being cut up, first of all, and then being covered as part of a collage in a layer of Mod Podge, which will just nicely seal everything. And this is a bottle where I'd used about 2/3 of it already, and I've just topped it up, almost fully topped it up with a bit of water and given it a good shake. So this is diluted Mod Podge. is what I'm using to stick things down, and I've got a sponge brush to use that with. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to try and see how much I can get done in bursts of roughly 20-25 minutes. So I'm going to just crack on. I don't really have a plan. There's nothing I'm particularly aiming for. I don't have any patterns or compositions or anything or themes in mind. I am just going to tear some things up, stick them down onto my 8 backing pages and see how far that gets me. Okay, let's crack on then. these have dried in the sun for about half an hour while I went off and did other things. I'm quite happy with these so far. We've got two which are tending more towards the bluey green side of things, although this has got all sorts of colours on, and two which are more reddy purple. I really like how translucent the black and white packing paper has gone. So we get a hint of a red line going through these circles here, which I decided to emphasise a bit more by bringing out some red scraps. Similarly, we've got a black line and a bit of a visible word going on here. A little bit of pink showing through, which is why I decided to move into pinks and purples to start with, although we've tended back over towards blue again. We've also got the word haunt coming out through here. I'm not sure I can do anything with that. Might try and just leave it there and then treble there as well. But I don't really think I have anything that will emphasise that further. So my next step is I have picked out from my very messy pile of things which I cut out of the magazine in my ugly magazine video. I've picked out a selection over here of things that I think might be useful. I'm going to try to ignore the rest of the pile. Get you back and centered again. Sorry for moving you around so much. You must be feeling a little bit seasick by this point. So I've picked out a selection of things, largely bluey greeny colours, a few bits of red and purple going on, some textures. I've not really picked out any words. The word what, maybe that could go on something, but generally I've gone for the textures and colours and interesting shapes, and definitely a few circles and circular frames. I think they'll go quite well. There's rounded aspects to all four of these. So again, I'm going to go silent for a bit and maybe try to give myself 15 or 20 minutes to get some extra elements onto these collages. So I'll see you on the other side, I guess. goodness, there is nothing like a sudden and dramatic glue spill to focus the mind and push you into some decisions that you might not otherwise have made, for better or for worse. Very little of that glue was wasted. In the end, I got a lot of it back in the jar just by sort of scooping it up with the mat. I also took the opportunity to make 2 masterboards with some of my painted papers. These wouldn't have happened on that day if it wasn't for that spill, but that felt like quite a good use of the glue that was still all over the mat. I will end up stenciling over these with some acrylic paint, slicing them up into pieces that could go onto greetings cards maybe, or turn them into journaling tags, something like that, maybe even little gift tags, add some focal points to them. So that's what I will do with these, and my ridiculously large and ever-growing pile of masterboards, which I keep forgetting to do anything with, and they are taking over one of the boxes downstairs. So that happened. I also made some additional sort of mostly neutral with maybe one focal colour, made another set of 4 tags here. They got done, and here we have in the end 4 collaged pieces that I was working on while the glue spill happened. And what I've done with these since I was last on screen is I ironed them. I put a tea towel over the top of them and gave them a very gentle iron on a low heat, and then sat them under some heavy books for a couple of hours. They're still curling up a little bit, but that has flattened them out a fair bit, and they will flatten out more once they're stuck into something. So very quick, cool iron and a flatten out. I've trimmed them all. I just used the page that I'd stuck everything onto. I just trimmed any excess that had come around the edge. And I've added some acrylic paint using some new markers that I got. These are the Sharpie creative markers. I picked a pack of them up because they were on offer at the supermarket, and I'm really pleased with them. They don't seem to take any sort of priming, so you don't have to shake them to activate the paint and get it all mixed up again. It just seems to work straight from the packet. You do have to store them horizontally, apparently. I'm assuming that's so that it stays fairly consistently wicking up into that nib, and they seem to have pretty good coverage. So yeah, not an advertisement, just a bit of a preliminary review. Yeah, quite happy with those so far. So anywhere that I thought needed a bit of extra decoration, or if I felt that, for example, the blue and green from over here and a bit here needed pulling into some other sections, that's what I've done, and I've tried to echo some of the shapes that are on there as well. So quite happy with that one. This one I went all in on the repetition of shapes and marks, and I also felt it needed this darker blue from here repeating across the whole piece. This I had to make a very snap decision about just putting things down and calling it done. However, I am quite happy with it now the marks are on it. I've echoed that crescent moon shape quite a lot, and these arches as well have come across in other places, generally trying to even out the colours, so bringing some black into the lighter bits, bringing some red and blue onto the darker bits where it wasn't already. So that's worked out all right, I think, considering it was done in something of a panic. And then this was my last one. Ooh, I don't really like this, I'll be honest. I quite like the trails of spots going across. I do quite like these sort of energy burst patterns with the extra spots on the end. I don't think it was the best use of this frame with the stadium on. I don't know if you can tell, but I've gone over this a few times with pen. I had one design in the middle, went over it with the white pen, the white acrylic marker, drew a different pattern on top of that. I just think it's too busy and this is sort of getting lost a bit, but hey ho, you win some, you lose some. And the next step of what I'm doing might end up improving on this even further. You never know. So my plan for these is to make a concertina style sort of art book, I guess, bit of an art journal. So these will end up with hinged parts between them so that they fold back up into a concertina. I'll probably alternate between the colourful ones and the plainer ones. And then what that will reveal on the back are some pictures surrounded by a lot of text. So there'll be a couple of videos coming up, one where I show how I'm attaching these, and another one where I frame the pictures that are remaining on the back of these cards. And I'm going to borrow a couple of ideas from quilting, from the making of quilt blocks, to show how you can frame a small section of picture with some other collage bits and really highlight the bits that you want to highlight and cover up the bits that you don't. So those are my future plans. This is what I salvaged. They're not all that I would want them to be, but they're not in their final form yet. They have a way to go on their journey. And not everything has to be something that you love. We learn the whole time. Learn the kind of colour combinations we like, the sort of shapes that we like, the techniques that we like or hate, the sort of finishes and textures that we end up with. This is all part of the process, and the process is the most important thing. Alright, that's all from me. I'm going to put a lid on this in a way that I didn't put a lid on the glue. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.